My name is Myra Summers. I was 41 years old when my sister tried to reclaim the son she had given me 19 years earlier. She became pregnant at 16. My parents panicked. They believed a baby would destroy the family's reputation, ruin Vanessa's future, and unravel everything they had worked to protect. So they came to me. I was 22, single, and had never even held a newborn before. I took him anyway. I raised him on my own, worked 2 jobs during his first 3 years, wrapped his Christmas presents in newspaper, and attended every parent-teacher conference by myself. Meanwhile, my sister moved to Boston, finished college, earned her MBA, got married twice, and never once called to ask about her son. Then he graduated from high school, and my sister walked into that gymnasium carrying a cake that read, "Congratulations from your real mom." What happened at that graduation made my mother cry, caused my sister's boyfriend to walk away, and led 200 strangers to stand up for a woman they had never met. Before we begin, if you enjoy listening to stories about family and the moments that shape our lives, take a second to like and subscribe. Leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now let me take you back 19 years, to the night my mother called me at 2 o'clock in the morning. I grew up in Willow Creek, Ohio, population 11,000. It was the kind of town where your neighbors knew your report card before you did, and the grocery store cashier always asked about your grandmother's hip. My sister Vanessa was 6 years younger than I was. She was the baby of the family, the beautiful one, the girl who could walk into any room and make people smile simply by being there. I was the other daughter, the one who set the table, washed the dishes, and drove Vanessa to dance class every Tuesday and Thursday because my mother always said it was good practice for when I had children of my own someday. I loved my sister. I want to make that clear. I loved her the way older sisters often do, with irritation and tenderness woven together so tightly they cannot be separated. Our mother, Rita, believed one thing above all else. Vanessa was delicate. Vanessa needed protecting. Vanessa was the child everyone should worry about. I was the dependable one, the one who handled problems, the one who never needed anyone to check on her because I would always figure things out. Our father, Gerald, simply agreed with whatever Rita said. He was not a cruel man. He was an absent one. Physically present at the dinner table, but missing from every conversation that truly mattered. I was 22 the spring everything changed. I had just completed my bachelor's degree in education at Ohio State. I had been accepted into a master's program with a full scholarship. I had a plan, a timeline, and a tiny studio apartment with a window facing a parking lot, which I thought was beautiful simply because it belonged to me. Vanessa was 16, a sophomore in high school. She had a boyfriend named Tyler, who drove a Mustang and worked at the local movie theater. Then, one night in March, the phone rang at 2 in the morning. It was my mother. I drove the 40 minutes back to my parents' house through the darkness. Rita was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea she wasn't drinking. Gerald stood by the refrigerator with his arms folded, staring at a single spot on the floor. Vanessa was upstairs. I could hear her crying through the ceiling. Without looking up when I sat down, Rita slid a piece of paper across the table. It was an ultrasound image. 4 months pregnant. 4 months. Vanessa had known for 4 months and had told no one. Rita's first words were not about Vanessa. They were not about the baby. They were not about Tyler, who had already stopped returning Vanessa's calls. Her first words were, "The neighbors cannot know." I still remember the clock on the wall reading 11 minutes past 2, the untouched tea growing cold, and Gerald clearing his throat without saying a single word. Rita explained the options with the precision of someone outlining a battle plan. Adoption, but that would require paperwork, and paperwork meant people would find out. Keeping the baby, But Vanessa was only 16, and Rita refused to have a teenage mother living in her house. "It would ruin everything we've built," she said, as though they had built something greater than a tidy front lawn and a carefully protected reputation. Then she walked to the hall closet and returned with a small yellow baby blanket folded into a neat square. "This was yours," she said, placing it in my hands. "When you were born." I held the blanket. It was soft, worn thin after 22 years in storage, carrying the scent of cedar and dust. Rita sat down again and looked directly at me for the first time since I had arrived. "You have to help," she said. "You're her sister." The following morning, Rita made her position unmistakably clear. If I refused to take the baby, they would contact an adoption agency by Friday. The baby would be raised by strangers. Vanessa would return to school, and no one would ever speak of it again. I asked the only question that mattered. "What about Vanessa? Does she want to keep the baby?" Rita dismissed the question with a wave of her hand. "Vanessa is a child. She doesn't know what she wants." Gerald nodded. He always nodded. I looked over at Vanessa, who had come downstairs and was sitting on the couch with her knees pulled tightly against her chest. She was wearing a hoodie 3 sizes too large. Mascara was smeared beneath her eyes. She looked exactly like what she was, a frightened 16-year-old girl with no idea what was happening to her body or her future. "Vanessa," I asked gently, "what do you want?" She looked at Rita, then at me, then down at the floor. "I want it to go away," she whispered. Rita immediately pointed toward me. "There, you heard her. She has school. She has her whole life ahead of her." She has school. I need you to remember those words, because 19 years later, on the worst day of my life, I would hear them again inside a gymnasium filled with 200 people. And by then, those 4 words would mean something entirely different. I drove home that night with the yellow blanket resting on the passenger seat beside me. I hadn't said yes yet, but I hadn't said no either. And in my family, silence was treated the same as agreement. 2 weeks later, I called my mother and told her I would do it. The very next morning, I withdrew from my master's program. Dylan was born on July 14th at 3:17 in the afternoon. He weighed 6 pounds 9 ounces, had a full head of dark hair, and a cry loud enough to strip paint. I was in the delivery room. Vanessa was there, of course, because she was the one giving birth. Rita stood by the door with her arms crossed, watching the clock. Gerald waited in the hallway, probably staring at a spot on the floor. The labor lasted 11 hours. Vanessa was brave. I will always give her that. She didn't complain. She gripped the bed rail, breathed the way the nurse instructed, and pushed every time they told her to. She was only 16 years old, and her body was doing something extraordinary. I watched her face through every contraction and kept thinking, she's so young. When Dylan was born, the nurse cleaned him, wrapped him in a blanket, and held him out. "Who wants to hold him first?" There were 3 people in that room. Vanessa turned her face toward the wall. Rita didn't move. The nurse looked at me. I took him. 6 pounds 9 ounces. His eyes were closed, his tiny fist wrapped around my index finger, and he stopped crying instantly, as though he had been waiting for the right person to hold him. The nurse asked who would be taking him home. Silence. The longest silence of my life. "I am," I said. 3 days later, I carried Dylan into my 1-bedroom apartment on East Willow Street. I had a crib borrowed from a coworker, a box of diapers from the dollar store, and the yellow blanket from my mother's closet. That first night, I wrapped him in it. The same blanket that had wrapped me 22 years earlier. It barely covered him, but it was soft, it was warm, and it was ours. That first year almost broke me. Dylan had colic. Every night from 8 until midnight, he cried for 4 straight hours. I walked endless circles around my apartment with him against my chest, humming songs I only half remembered from childhood, staring at the clock and praying for silence. I worked as a teaching assistant at Willow Creek Elementary from 7:45 until 3:30, then came home to a screaming baby. I learned how to survive on 4 hours of sleep. I learned to eat standing up. I learned to shower in less than 3 minutes because 3 minutes was exactly how long Dylan would tolerate sitting in his bouncy seat. One night at 11 o'clock, after Dylan had been crying for 3 straight hours, I called my mother. I was standing in my kitchen wearing sweatpants and a shirt stained with formula. I was crying too. "Mom, I need help," I said. "Just for one night, please." Rita's voice never changed. "You chose this, Myra. You're an adult. Figure it out." Then she hung up. Meanwhile, Vanessa moved to Boston for college that August. She had been accepted to a small private school. Her tuition was covered through scholarships and our parents' savings. The same savings they claimed couldn't pay for Dylan's pediatrician bills when I asked. In October, the family court in Franklin County granted me legal guardianship of Dylan. The paperwork was simple. Vanessa signed the voluntary relinquishment forms by fax from Boston during rush week. I placed the documents in a small, fireproof safe beneath my bed. Inside that safe were the yellow blanket, Dylan's hospital bracelet, and a photograph of him asleep on my chest when he was 4 days old, his mouth slightly open, his tiny fist curled, peaceful for the first time since he had been born. He was legally mine. Finally. Completely. Let me give you the next 5 years in snapshots. Dylan at 1. His first steps. He walked from the coffee table to the couch, 3 feet across open space, arms stretched out, grinning as though he had just conquered Mount Everest. I recorded it on a flip phone that barely had room for 30 seconds of video. I still have that video. Dylan at 2. "Ma" was his first word. Not mama, not mommy, just ma. Short, efficient. As though he had already figured out the most important word and didn't need any extra syllables. Dylan at 3. I started teaching part-time at Willow Creek Elementary, working mornings while our neighbor, Patty, watched Dylan for $40 a week. Patty had 6 grandchildren and the patience of a geological formation. Dylan adored her. Dylan at 4. He could read. Not just letters, words, sentences. One morning at breakfast, he read the cereal box and asked me what riboflavin meant. I had to look it up. Dylan at 5. His first day of kindergarten. After he walked through the school doors, I stood outside the gates for another 15 minutes, just in case. He never looked back. He marched inside with his Spider-Man backpack and never looked back. I was so proud and so heartbroken at the same time that I sat in my car and cried. No one from the Summers family came to visit during those 5 years. Not once. No Christmas gifts, no birthday cards. Rita called every now and then to ask how I was managing, but never to offer help. Gerald mailed a check for $50 on Dylan's 3rd birthday. There wasn't even a note, just the check. On Christmas morning, when Dylan was 3, it was just the 2 of us. I wrapped his presents in newspaper because I couldn't afford wrapping paper. He didn't notice. He was 3. He thought the comic strips were part of the present. When Dylan turned 6, Vanessa called. It was a Tuesday evening. I was making spaghetti. Dylan sat at the table drawing a dinosaur eating a spaceship. The phone rang. The caller ID showed a Boston area code. I almost ignored it because I assumed it was a telemarketer. "Myra, it's Vanessa." Her voice had changed. It was deeper, more polished, as though she had spent years learning how to sound like an adult. She didn't ask about Dylan. Not how he was doing in school, not what he liked to eat, not whether he still had colic or had long since outgrown it. She asked none of those things. Instead, she asked about a car. A 2003 Toyota Camry she had left in our parents' garage 6 years earlier. She wanted to know if it was still there, because she needed to sell it. "I'm graduating next spring," she said, "and I need the money for my apartment deposit." I told her the car was probably still sitting in the garage. She said she'd call Rita to arrange everything. Then she said, "Thanks, bye," and she hung up. 42 seconds. I timed the call afterward because I couldn't believe that was the entire conversation. That same evening, Rita called. "Your sister is graduating next spring. Top of her class, business and marketing. Don't make things difficult for her." "I'm not making anything difficult for anyone," I replied. "I'm making spaghetti." Vanessa graduated summa cum laude from Emerson the following May. Rita drove to Boston for the ceremony. Gerald went too. They had Vanessa's graduation photo professionally framed, matted, and hung in the living room. It was an 18 by 24 portrait. Dylan's first day of school picture was on my refrigerator, held up by a ladybug-shaped magnet. It wasn't displayed in their house at all. When Dylan was 8, 2 things happened that changed the course of my life. The first was that Willow Creek High School offered me a full-time position as a special education aide, with a path to becoming coordinator if I completed my master's degree. The salary was $43,000 a year. It included benefits. For a single mother who had been surviving on a teaching assistant's paycheck and carefully planned grocery trips, that number felt like a fortune. The second happened while I was washing dishes. "Aunt Myra?" Dylan asked. "How come I don't have a mom and dad like the other kids?" My hands stopped moving. The water kept running. A plate slipped from my hands and clinked against the bottom of the sink. He was sitting behind me at the kitchen table with his homework spread out, a pencil in his hand, looking at me with those dark, thoughtful eyes that already seemed far too perceptive for an 8-year-old. I turned off the water, dried my hands, and sat across from him. "Dylan, I love you more than anything in this world. Your birth mom loves you too in her own way. But I'm the one who's here. I'm the one who's always going to be here." He studied my face. At 8 years old, he already knew how to read people as though they were books. "I know," he said. "I just wanted to call you Mom instead of Aunt Myra. Is that okay?" I hadn't cried in years. Not when Rita refused to help. Not when Vanessa called about a car instead of her son. Not when Christmas came and went without a single card from anyone. But when an 8-year-old boy asked for permission to call me Mom, I fell apart. He climbed out of his chair, walked around the table, and wrapped his small arms around me. He smelled like pencil shavings and grape juice. "It's okay, Mom," he said. It was the first time. That night, after Dylan had gone to bed, I sat alone at the kitchen table for a long time. I thought about calling Rita. I wanted to say, "Your grandson just called me Mom." It was the happiest and saddest moment of my life, and I need you to tell me I'm doing okay. I didn't call. I already knew what she would say. She would tell me not to confuse Dylan. She would remind me that Vanessa was his real mother. She would tell me I was overstepping. Instead, I opened the small fireproof safe beneath my bed and took out the legal guardianship papers. I read them under the light of my bedside lamp. My name appeared on every page. Myra Lynn Summers. Legal guardian, Vanessa Marie Summers. Signature of biological mother, relinquishing all custodial rights, notarized, stamped, filed with Franklin County. Beneath those papers lay the yellow blanket. I'd kept it folded inside the safe ever since Dylan outgrew it when he was 5. He used to take it everywhere, with him to the grocery store, to bed, even into the bathroom. The corners were frayed and nearly a quarter of the original stitching had come undone. It smelled like baby shampoo and years gone by. I was still holding it when I heard a soft knock at my bedroom door. Dylan stood there in his dinosaur pajamas. "Mom, I can't sleep." "Me neither," I said. He climbed into my bed, noticed the blanket in my hands, and reached for it. "That's my baby blanket," he said. He hadn't seen it in 3 years. "It was mine first," I told him, "before it was yours." He took it from me, carefully examined the worn edges, then folded it with a level of care that seemed unusual for an 8-year-old. He placed it back inside the safe. "We should keep it safe," he said. "It's important." It was more important than he could possibly know. I told Dylan the whole truth when he was 13. We were sitting on the front porch on a Sunday afternoon. For months, he had been asking questions. Not directly, questions that circled around the truth. Why did Grandma Rita always introduce him as Vanessa's son? Why wasn't there any record of his birth in the family photo albums? Why had he never met Tyler? So I told him everything. I told him about the phone call at 2 in the morning, about Rita's ultimatum, about the yellow blanket, about the 40-minute drive home through the dark. I told him Vanessa had been 16, frightened, and not ready. I told him about the legal documents. I told him that his biological mother had never called, written, or visited in 13 years. I didn't editorialize. I didn't tell him Vanessa was a bad person. I didn't tell him Rita had been wrong. I simply told him what had happened, in the order it happened. Dylan listened without saying a word. When I finished, he stood up, walked inside, and closed the door to his bedroom. He stayed there for 2 days. On the 3rd morning, he came into the kitchen already dressed for school. I'd made scrambled eggs. He sat down, picked up his fork, and ate 3 bites. Then he looked up. "I'm not angry at her." "At Vanessa?" I asked. "At any of them. I'm just sad for her. She missed everything." Then he left for school. I remained at the kitchen table for another 20 minutes, still holding the spatula, barely remembering to breathe. Dylan never stopped calling me Mom. He never asked to meet Vanessa. He never asked to call Rita or Gerald. He simply kept being 13. Awkward, brilliant, growing 3 inches that summer. And he kept being mine. While I was raising Dylan, Vanessa was collecting accomplishments. She earned an MBA from Northwestern. By 28, she was a marketing director at a boutique agency in Chicago. She had a corner office, a company car, the kind of career that looked impressive in LinkedIn photos. She also collected marriages. The first lasted 2 years. His name was Brett. I never met him. The second lasted 14 months. His name was Marco. I never met him either. Each time Vanessa got divorced, Rita called me. Not to ask how Dylan was doing. Not to tell me how Vanessa's son had done on his math test. Not to mention that he had made the honor roll for the 4th year in a row. She called to tell me not to add to Vanessa's stress. "Your sister is going through a difficult time," Rita said after the second divorce. "She doesn't need judgment from anyone right now." "I haven't spoken to Vanessa in 3 years," I replied. "Good. Keep it that way. Let her heal." My sister married twice. She divorced twice. And through both marriages, she never once sent Dylan a birthday card. Every July 14th came and went. Year after year, the mailbox stayed empty. No card, no phone call, no text. The post office knew exactly where I lived. She simply chose not to use the address. Meanwhile, I finished my master's degree. It took 4 years of night classes while working full-time and raising Dylan. I graduated when Dylan was 8. No one from my family came to that graduation either. Claire Reeves, a co-worker who had become my closest friend, sat in the third row and cheered loudly enough for 10 people. The following year, I became the special education coordinator at Willow Creek High School. No one called to congratulate me, but that was all right. I'd stopped waiting for that phone call around year 4. The Thanksgiving when Dylan was 15 was the first time I had brought him to my parents' house in years. I don't know why I agreed to go. Maybe I thought things had changed. Maybe I wanted Dylan to experience a big family Thanksgiving at least once. Maybe I was simply tired of pretending the Summers family didn't exist. We drove the 40 minutes to Willow Creek. Dylan wore a button-down shirt he had picked out himself. He was nervous. I could tell because he kept adjusting his collar in the passenger side mirror. The house was full. Rita had invited cousins, an aunt, and 2 neighbors. The table was set for 14. Turkey, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole. A perfectly ordinary Thanksgiving, the kind you see in movies. Rita greeted us at the door. She gave Dylan a brief, performative hug. Then she led him into the dining room and introduced him to a cousin he had never met. "This is Vanessa's son, Dylan." Not Myra's son. Not our grandson whom Myra has raised on her own for 15 years. Not even simply Dylan. Just Vanessa's son. Under the table, Dylan reached for my hand. He squeezed it. He was 15 years old and he understood the family dynamic better than anyone else in that room. Gerald carved the turkey. Rita poured the wine. No one asked Dylan about school. No one asked about his grades. No one mentioned the science fair project that had earned him 2nd place at the state level. No one asked me about anything either. After dessert, Rita cornered me in the kitchen while she loaded the dishwasher. "It was nice of you to bring him," she said. "Vanessa will be happy to know he's doing well." "Then maybe Vanessa should ask him herself," I replied. Rita gave me that familiar look, the one that always meant, "You're being difficult again." We drove home in silence. Dylan was the first to speak. "I don't need to go back there, Mom." By Dylan's junior year, I realized he wasn't just intelligent, he was remarkable. Straight A's since freshman year, a P classes stacked 3 deep, captain of the debate team, a volunteer tutor at the community center every Saturday morning. His teacher stopped me in the hallway to say words like gifted and exceptional, and to ask whether I had considered early college admission. The only thing I'd been thinking about was making sure he had dinner every night and clean clothes for school. Everything else, the grades, the ambition, the quiet discipline, that was all Dylan. His college counselor asked me to come in for a meeting that October. "Dylan is on track to be valedictorian," she said. "His essay is one of the strongest I've read in 20 years. I asked what the essay was about. She slid a printed copy across her desk. Centered at the top in 12-point Times New Roman was the title, "The Woman Who Chose Me." I waited until I was sitting in the school parking lot to read it, because I couldn't bring myself to read it in front of another person. I sat in my Honda with the engine off and the windows rolled up. Then I read every word. He wrote about the day I brought him home from the hospital, about the yellow blanket, about learning to ride a bike in the parking lot of our apartment complex because we didn't have a driveway, about Christmas mornings with presents wrapped in newspaper, about the night he asked if he could call me Mom, and how I cried. He wrote, "Biology is an accident. Love is a decision. My mother made that decision every single day for 19 years, and she never once asked for credit." I sat in that car for another 20 minutes before I could drive away. The parking lot slowly emptied around me. The sun went down. I held that essay against the steering wheel and allowed myself to feel every single one of those years. 2 months before graduation, Dylan showed me the group chat. He came home from school one Wednesday, placed his phone on the kitchen counter with the screen facing up and said, "Mom, you need to see this." It was a family group text: Rita, Gerald, Vanessa, Aunt Patrice, Uncle Dale. Someone had accidentally added Dylan to the conversation. Probably Rita, who struggled to use her phone even on her best days. The messages stretched back 2 years. I sat at the kitchen table and scrolled while Dylan stood by the window with his arms crossed, watching me. One message from Rita, sent 14 months earlier, read, "When Vanessa is ready, she'll take Dylan back. Myra is just keeping him for now." 3 days later, Vanessa replied, "Give me a couple more years. I'm getting my life together." Gerald responded with a thumbs-up emoji. Aunt Patrice wrote, "Poor Vanessa. She's been through so much." Uncle Dale added, "Myra should be grateful she got to have a kid at all." I read every message twice. My hands stayed steady because they had to. The only sound in the kitchen was the refrigerator humming. For 2 years. For 2 entire years, my family had been discussing the return of my son as though he were a borrowed lawnmower. As though I were simply storing him until Vanessa decided she was ready to pick him up. I set the phone down and looked at Dylan. "Why didn't you show me this sooner?" "Because I didn't want you to lose them," he said, "even though they don't deserve you." He was 17 years old, standing in my kitchen, protecting me from my own family. I didn't call Rita. I didn't call Vanessa. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I walked into my bedroom, opened the fireproof safe, and checked the guardianship papers. Every page, every signature, every notarized stamp. Then I closed the safe and went back to making dinner. If you've ever been the person everyone depends on but no one thanks, if you've always been the reliable one while someone else received all the applause, then you know exactly how this feels. Hit that subscribe button and stay with me, because what happened at graduation is something I still can't believe Dylan had the courage to do. That night after dinner, Dylan and I sat together on the porch. "Why didn't you tell me when you first saw those messages?" I asked again. He was quiet for a long moment. The crickets filled the silence. "Because you would have confronted Grandma," he finally said. "And then she would have cut you off completely. Even though she doesn't treat you right, I know you still love her. I didn't want to be the reason you lost your mom." I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell him Rita had lost the right to be called my mother years ago. But the truth was more complicated than that. It always is when family is involved. "Dylan, you and I are a family. We've been a family since the day I brought you home. Whatever they believe, whatever they're planning, it doesn't change what's legally true or what's actually true. You are my son." He nodded. "I know. I've always known." I didn't confront anyone. I didn't forward the screenshots. I didn't post them online. I didn't send them to a lawyer. I didn't do any of the dramatic things you might expect. What I did was quiet. I opened the fireproof safe beneath my bed. I checked every document. The guardianship papers were valid. The voluntary relinquishment forms were signed and notarized. The school enrollment records. My name appeared on every emergency contact form for 19 years. The medical records. My signature was on every consent form from his very first vaccination onward. I also found the yellow blanket folded neatly in the corner of the safe, faded, frayed, carrying the faint scent of something I could no longer identify. I held it for a moment. Then I folded it back, closed the safe, and walked away. If they wanted a fight, the paperwork was ready. But I wasn't going to be the one to start it. 6 weeks before graduation, Rita called with news. She didn't ask about Dylan being named valedictorian. She didn't ask about the ceremony or whether she should bring anything. She called to talk about Vanessa. "Your sister has met someone," Rita said, the way people announce they've won the lottery. "His name is Harrison Whitfield. He's in real estate, very successful, very traditional. He wants a family, Myra. A real family, I leaned against the kitchen counter and listened. Vanessa told him about Dylan, about how complicated everything was, about how the family situation forced her to make a difficult choice. What choice was that? I asked. You know what I mean. The choice to let you help. Let me help. That was how my mother described 19 years of raising a child alone. Letting me help. Harrison is very moved, Rita continued. He thinks Vanessa is brave. He wants to meet Dylan. This could be Vanessa's chance. Myra, her chance to finally have everything she deserves. Her chance. Not Dylan's chance to know his biological mother. Not a chance for the family to heal. Not a chance for someone to finally acknowledge everything I had done. Vanessa's chance. That was the phrase my mother chose. The graduation of my son, the child I had raised for 19 years, and all she could see was an opportunity for Vanessa. Harrison doesn't know the full story, does he? I asked. He knows what he needs to know. He doesn't know she signed away her rights by fax during rush week. Silence. Then Rita said, "Don't ruin this for her." I hung up. I walked outside and sat on the front porch steps for 30 minutes, watching the streetlights come on one by one. Fireflies drifted through the yard. Lawnmowers hummed somewhere in the distance. Dylan came outside carrying 2 glasses of water and sat beside me. "Grandma called?" he asked. "Yeah." "About Aunt Vanessa?" "She's not your aunt." "I know," he said. "But it's easier." 3 weeks later, Dylan walked into the kitchen holding his phone. "She messaged me." I was sitting at the table grading papers with a red pen, a stack of IEP reports beside me. He turned the screen toward me. It was an Instagram direct message from an account with a professional headshot and 4,000 followers. "Hey, handsome. I know this is out of the blue, but I'm your bio mom. I've thought about you every single day. I would love to meet you. I'm coming to town soon." 3 heart emojis followed, then a smiling face. I read the message twice. I set my red pen down and looked at Dylan. He was watching me the way he always did whenever something important happened. Quietly, carefully, waiting to see my reaction before deciding on his own. "What do you want to do?" I asked. "I don't know. What should I do?" "That's your decision, Dylan, not mine." He sat there thinking for a full 2 minutes. Then he typed a reply. Short, polite, reserved. "Hi, thank you for reaching out. I appreciate you thinking of me." No mom, no heart emojis, no "I'd love to meet you." Just a simple acknowledgement that he had received the message. Vanessa replied within 90 seconds. "Can't wait to see you at graduation. I'm bringing someone special I want you to meet." Dylan read it. Then he locked his phone and placed it face down on the table. I thought about Vanessa at 16, signing legal papers by fax from a sorority house. Then I thought about Vanessa at 35, typing, "I thought about you every single day," followed by 3 heart emojis. Same person, same avoidance, different font. She has school. I've thought about you every single day. 2 sentences, 19 years apart. The first one, at least, had been honest. 6 weeks before graduation, the school made it official. Dylan Summers, valedictorian, class of 2026. I received the call from the principal's office on a Tuesday morning between 2nd and 3rd period. I was in the middle of an IEP meeting for a student with dyslexia. I excused myself, stepped into the hallway, and listened as Principal Ricks told me that my son had earned the highest GPA in a graduating class of 312 students. "He'll be giving the valedictorian address at the ceremony," Ricks said. 5 to 7 minutes. He can choose his own topic." I thanked her, ended the call, and leaned against the hallway wall for a moment. A sophomore walked past and asked if I was okay. I told her I was fine. I was better than fine. That evening, I shared the news with Dylan. He smiled. It was the quiet, restrained smile that came from no one in the Summers family, because it belonged entirely to him. "I already started writing the speech," he said. "Can I read it?" "Not yet. You'll hear it at the ceremony." For the next 6 weeks, I heard him practicing behind his closed bedroom door, reading aloud, pausing, starting over. Sometimes everything would go silent for 5 or 10 minutes, and I knew he was rewriting part of it. I bought a new dress for the first time in 3 years. Claire helped me choose it. Navy blue, simple, comfortable enough to sit in a plastic chair for 2 hours. Claire said I looked like I was going to a state dinner. I told her I was going to something even better. Dylan ironed his own shirt. He had been ironing his own shirt since he was 14. I had taught him. By then, he was better at it than I was. 2 weeks, then 1 week, then 3 days. Graduation was almost here. And so was Vanessa. The phone call came on a Thursday evening, 9 days before graduation. Rita's name appeared on my phone. I almost let it ring. Almost. "Vanessa will be at the ceremony," Rita said. No greeting, no small talk. "She's bringing Harrison. They're flying in from Chicago." "Fine. Don't make a scene, Myra." "I have never made a scene in my life." "Good, because this is an important day for Vanessa." I held the phone away from my ear and stared at it. An important day for Vanessa. Not for Dylan, the one graduating. Not for me, the one who had helped him with homework every night for 13 years. For Vanessa, the one flying in with a new boyfriend to perform the role of mother before an audience. "She's bringing a cake," Rita added. "Something special to celebrate." "That's nice," I said, because there was nothing else to say. I hung up and sat on the porch. It was May. The air smelled of freshly cut grass and magnolia blossoms. I could hear the neighbor's sprinkler clicking back and forth. 15 minutes later, Dylan came outside carrying 2 glasses of lemonade. He sat beside me. We drank quietly for a while. "She's coming," I finally said. "I know." "With Harrison." "I figured." "Are you okay with that?" He set his glass on the porch railing and looked at me with those dark, steady eyes. "Mom, I've been okay for a long time. I was okay when I was 8 and asked if I could call you Mom. I was okay when I was 13 and you told me the truth. I was okay when I read the group chat. And I'm okay now." He stood, gently squeezed my shoulder and smiled. "She can bring whoever she wants. She can bring a cake and a banner and a marching band. It won't change anything." Then he went back inside. I stayed on the porch until the sun disappeared. Graduation morning. I woke at 5:30. I couldn't fall back asleep. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, listening to the quiet sounds of the house. Dylan's cap and gown hung over the back of the dining room chair. Navy blue, gold tassel. I'd picked them up from the school office 3 days earlier and carefully pressed them with the iron set on low heat, using a damp cloth between the polyester fabric and the iron, exactly the way my mother had taught me when I was 10 years old. Dylan came downstairs at 7. He had showered, shaved, though there was barely anything to shave after 2 years, and dressed in a white button-down shirt and dark slacks. "How do you feel?" I asked. "Hungry." I made eggs, toast, and orange juice. We ate together in comfortable silence. Morning sunlight streamed through the kitchen window and caught the salt shaker just right, casting a tiny rainbow across the table. "Can I see the speech?" I asked one more time. "You'll hear it," he replied. from the third row. After breakfast, he went upstairs to finish getting ready. I washed the dishes, dried them, and put them away. Then I went upstairs to get dressed. When I came back down, Dylan was standing in the hallway adjusting his cap in the mirror. That's when I noticed something in his hand. Small, yellow, folded. The blanket. The yellow baby blanket from 19 years earlier. The edges were frayed. The stitching was worn away. He tucked it carefully into the inside pocket of his vest. He caught my eyes in the mirror and smiled. "For good luck," he said. I didn't ask anything else. I picked up my car keys. Claire was meeting us at the school. The gymnasium was only 20 minutes away. It might as well have been a courtroom. The Willow Creek High School gymnasium held 400 people. That morning, every seat was filled. Rows of plastic chairs covered the gym floor. A small stage stood at the front with a podium, a microphone, and a banner that read, "Class of 2026. The school orchestra was tuning up in one corner. 3 violins, a cello, 2 flutes, and one student holding a tuba who looked as though he'd rather be anywhere else. Claire and I found our seats in the third row on the left side, close enough to see the podium, close enough to watch Dylan cross the stage. I smoothed my dress, placed my purse beneath my chair, and folded my hands in my lap. Then the double doors at the back of the gym opened. Vanessa walked in as though she were arriving at a gala. She wore an emerald green wrap dress. Her auburn hair fell in loose waves past her shoulders. Her heels clicked confidently across the hardwood floor. Her smile was broad enough to be seen from the stage. Harrison walked beside her. Gray suit, silver watch, salt and pepper hair perfectly combed. He carried himself the way wealthy men often do, shoulders back, chin level, looking over the room as though he were deciding whether to buy it. Behind them came Rita and Gerald. Rita wore a floral blouse and the lipstick she saved for special occasions. Gerald wore a tie that didn't match his shirt. In Rita's hands, resting on a plastic tray lined with a paper doily, was a cake. White frosting, pink lettering, the kind you order from a grocery store bakery with 24 hours notice. Congratulations from your real mom. 200 people filled that gymnasium. Families finding their seats, students lining up in the hallway. And my own mother was walking down the center aisle carrying a cake that declared my son belonged to someone else. I didn't move. I didn't speak. Claire reached over and took my hand. Before the ceremony began, Vanessa made her move. She walked straight to the staging area where the graduates were lined up. Security didn't stop her because she smiled at the volunteer parent by the entrance and said, "I'm Dylan Summers' mother." Technically, biologically, she wasn't lying. From my seat, I watched her find Dylan in line. She threw her arms around him in a long, theatrical embrace. Both arms wrapped tightly around him. Her head tilted just enough for everyone to see. Dylan stood perfectly still. His arms remained at his sides. Harrison stayed back, watching. 3 rows behind me, Rita beamed proudly with the cake balanced across her lap. Then Vanessa turned and walked toward me. Her heels clicked steadily across the floor. The smile never left her face. She stopped at the end of my row and leaned in close enough for the people behind us to hear. "Myra, thank you so much for taking care of my son all these years. You've been an incredible babysitter." She paused, rested her hand on my shoulder, and smiled even wider. "But I'm here now. I'll take it from here." Babysitter. 19 years. 4,000 school lunches. 300 parent-teacher conferences. 11,000 bedtime stories. 16 years of homework help. Christmas mornings. 19 birthday cakes that I baked myself because a bakery cake cost $40, and $40 was a week's worth of groceries. Babysitter. I didn't answer. Not because I couldn't think of something to say. I had 19 years' worth of words waiting inside me. I stayed silent because I saw Dylan watching us from the staging area. He was standing completely still. His jaw was clenched, his eyes were fixed on mine. And in those eyes, I understood a message as clearly as if he had spoken it aloud. Wait for me. So I waited. The ceremony began promptly at 10 o'clock. Principal Hicks welcomed the families. The school orchestra played a classical piece that no one seemed to recognize. The superintendent delivered a speech about futures, possibilities, and the importance of community. It lasted 12 minutes. It included no fewer than 6 sports metaphors. Then the graduates began crossing the stage, one by one. Name announced, diploma received, handshake, smile, photograph. 263 graduates called in alphabetical order. Vanessa had moved to the second row directly in front of me. She had her phone out, recording. Each time another student crossed the stage, she lowered it. When someone named Samantha Ruiz walked across, Vanessa leaned toward Harrison and whispered something. He nodded. He looked comfortable. He looked like a man who believed every word his girlfriend had told him about her past. Rita sat at the end of the row with a cake resting on her lap. She guarded it as though it contained state secrets. Gerald sat beside her with his hands on his knees, staring straight ahead. I remained in my chair with my hands folded. Claire sat beside me, her phone tucked away in her purse, her full attention on the stage. She was the only person in that gymnasium who knew the entire story. The group chat, the facts, the 19 years. Summers, Dylan. I heard his name, and everything else disappeared. The gymnasium, the crowd, the cake, Vanessa's emerald green dress, Harrison's silver watch, all of it faded away. Dylan walked across the stage, tall, steady. His cap sat perfectly straight. He shook the superintendent's hand, accepted his diploma, and looked toward me in the third row. Then he winked. After that, he walked to the podium because the next item on the program was the valedictorian address. And every person in that gymnasium was about to learn who Myra Summers really was. Dylan adjusted the microphone, cleared his throat, and unfolded a sheet of paper. "Good morning," he said. His voice was calm, clear, and projected exactly the way I had taught him when he was 12 and giving his first book report presentation. "Graduates, families, faculty, thank you for being here." He began with what everyone expected: the confusion of freshman year, the mystery meet in the cafeteria, the substitute teacher who showed movies for 6 straight weeks. The audience laughed. Vanessa laughed the loudest, her hand resting on Harrison's arm. Dylan spoke about everything Willow Creek had taught him, about the teachers who stayed late, about the janitor who knew every student's name, about the librarian who kept a secret stash of granola bars for students who came to school hungry. He was good, natural, warm, sincere without becoming sentimental. The audience was completely with him. Then he paused. He looked down at the paper in his hands. He studied it for 3 seconds. 5. Then, with careful intention, he folded it. The same careful way he had folded the yellow blanket when he was 8 years old. He placed it on the podium. Then he began speaking without his notes. "I've been planning this speech for 6 weeks," he said. "I wrote 9 drafts. But I realized this morning that the most important thing I want to say isn't on any of those pages." The gymnasium fell silent. It was the kind of silence that happens when 200 people realize, all at once, that something unexpected is about to happen. Vanessa was still smiling. She leaned forward slightly. Her phone continued recording. She believed he was about to speak about her. I could see it in the way she straightened her back and squeezed Harrison's hand. She was preparing for her moment. She had no idea what was coming. "The person I want to thank most today," Dylan said, "isn't a teacher, a coach, or a friend. It's a woman who was 22 years old when she was handed a newborn baby and told, 'This is your responsibility now.'" The gymnasium remained perfectly still. She had never changed a diaper. She had never warmed a bottle. She had just been accepted into a master's program with a full scholarship, and she gave it up the very next morning without hesitation. He paused again. He let the words settle. She moved into a one-bedroom apartment and figured it out. 4 hours of sleep a night during the first year. A teaching assistant's salary. Dollar store diapers. She wrapped my Christmas presents in newspaper because she couldn't afford wrapping paper. Somewhere near the back of the gym, someone sniffled. Probably another mother. Someone who recognized the kind of exhaustion that lives deep in your bones. She went back to school when I was 5. Night classes. 4 years. She earned a master's degree in special education, and no one from her family came to her graduation. One friend sat in the 3rd row and cheered loudly enough for 10 people. Claire squeezed my hand so tightly I couldn't feel my fingers anymore. She helped me with homework every night for 13 years. She taught me how to cook, how to do laundry, how to shake hands firmly and look people in the eye. She taught me how to iron a shirt, change a tire, and write a thank you note by hand. She came to every parent-teacher conference, every school play, every award ceremony. She never missed a single one. Vanessa was no longer smiling. Her phone was still recording, but her hand had fallen into her lap. She stared at Dylan with an expression I had never seen before. First confusion, then recognition, then fear. Dylan looked directly at me, 3rd row, left side. "She is not the woman who gave birth to me," he said. "But she is the woman who chose me every single day for 19 years without asking for anything in return. Without complaining. Without quitting." His voice never cracked. His hands never shook. He stood at that podium with the calm confidence of someone who had spent 19 years learning composure from the most composed person he had ever known. Her name is Myra Summers. She is my mother. The gymnasium erupted. 200 people applauded. Some stood. Others wiped away tears. Claire was openly crying. The orchestra teacher in the corner dabbed at her eyes with a folded program. Principal Hicks, standing beside the stage steps, pressed a hand against her heart. I couldn't move. I remained in my plastic chair with tears streaming down my face, my hands still folded in my lap exactly where they had rested for the past 45 minutes. Only now, they were trembling. Vanessa sat 2 rows ahead of me. She had stopped clapping. Her phone rested in her lap, still recording the ceiling. Harrison looked at her, then at me, then at Dylan on the stage, then back at Vanessa. Rita sat at the end of her row. The cake was still balanced on her lap. "Congratulations from your real mom." The pink lettering faced outward for everyone around her to see. Except those words meant something entirely different now. Because 200 people had just heard Dylan Summers name his real mother. And it wasn't the woman written on the cake. I looked at my son standing on that stage. He looked back at me. Then he silently mouthed 2 words no one else could see. "Thank you." If you're still here, then you already know this isn't simply a graduation story. It's about who truly earns the title of mom. If you've ever held someone together when no one was watching, this story is for you. Like, subscribe, and stay with me. The ceremony came to an end. Families poured out onto the lawn. Graduates embraced their classmates. Cameras clicked from every direction. The afternoon sun was warm, and the air carried the scent of freshly cut grass and cheap cologne. I was standing near the oak tree by the parking lot when Vanessa found me. She came quickly, her heels sinking into the grass, mascara already beginning to smudge at the corners of her eyes. Harrison followed several steps behind, his hands in his pockets, his mouth set in a thin line. "What was that?" Vanessa's voice was sharp, loud enough that a nearby group of parents turned to look. "What did you tell him to say?" "I didn't tell him anything." "You coached him. You turned my own son against me." Dylan stepped up behind her, still wearing his cap and gown, his diploma in one hand. "Nobody coached me," he said. His voice was calm, steady, the voice of someone who had rehearsed this moment in his mind for years. "I wrote that speech myself." Vanessa turned toward him. "Baby, I'm your mother. I gave birth to you. I carried you for 9 months. "And then you signed a piece of paper and faxed it from a sorority house," Dylan replied. "During rush week." Vanessa opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. "Grandma told me once that you had to leave because you had school," Dylan continued. "And you did. You went to school. And then to a career. And then to 2 marriages. And then to Chicago. And that's fine. But you don't get to walk into my graduation carrying a cake that says, 'Real Mom,' and pretend those 19 years never happened." He turned toward Rita, who stood about 10 feet away with the cake still in her hands. "And Grandma, you said today was Vanessa's chance. But this is my graduation." "Not her audition." Harrison stepped forward. He had remained silent through the entire exchange, watching with the careful attention of a man who negotiated deals for a living and knew when the numbers no longer made sense. "Vanessa," he said. His voice was low, controlled. "You told me the family situation was complicated. You told me you were forced to give him up." "That's the word you used." "Forced." Vanessa wiped at her eyes. "Harrison, it was complicated." "Did you voluntarily sign away your parental rights?" "I was 16. "Did you sign voluntarily?" The people around us stopped pretending not to listen. One parent lowered a camera. 2 graduates nearby turned to watch. Vanessa looked toward Rita, searching for help. Rita stepped forward and reached for Harrison's arm. "You don't understand our family." Harrison quietly moved his arm away. Then he looked at me. Really looked at me for the first time. "You raised him from birth?" "Yes," I answered. "Alone?" "Yes." He turned back to Vanessa. His jaw tightened. His eyes had changed. The warmth was gone. In its place was something cold, something precise. He didn't say another word. He straightened his jacket, adjusted his watch, then walked across the lawn toward the parking lot. A moment later, I heard his car start, a smooth, expensive sound. I watched it leave the parking lot, pass the school sign, drive beyond the gymnasium, and disappear down the road toward the highway. Vanessa stood alone in the middle of the lawn. Her emerald dress moved gently in the breeze. Sunlight caught her auburn hair. She watched the only man who had ever made her want to become a mother drive away because he had just learned she never truly had been one. The cake rested on the grass where Rita had set it down. No one touched it. No one ever would. In the silence after Harrison left, something changed in Rita's face. She was looking at Dylan. Not Vanessa, not me. At Dylan. Standing there in his cap and gown, diploma in one hand, yellow tassel brushing his shoulder. Her grandson. The baby she had handed over to me 19 years earlier with a yellow blanket and an ultimatum. Her eyes filled with tears. Her lower lip trembled. For a single moment, maybe 3 seconds, maybe 5, I saw something in my mother's face that I had never seen before. Regret. Real, unfiltered regret. She opened her mouth and I thought, this is it. This is the moment she apologizes. This is the moment she admits she was wrong. This is the moment 19 years of silence finally breaks open and something honest comes through. "Myra," she said. I waited. "If you hadn't poisoned him against his own mother, none of this would have happened." Just like that, the moment vanished. The tears disappeared. Her trembling mouth hardened into a firm line. The regret, if it had ever truly been regret, collapsed back into the fortress of certainty Rita had lived inside since long before I was born. Gerald stood behind her, silent as always, looking down at the grass. He hadn't spoken a single word since he arrived. Dylan looked at Rita. His expression was patient, not angry, not bitter, simply patient. The expression you give someone who cannot hear you no matter how clearly you speak. "Grandma," he said, "no one poisoned me. I'm 19 years old. I have eyes. I have ears. And I have 19 years of memories. Do you know how many of those memories include you? 7 Thanksgivings. 3 Christmases. 1 birthday card. That's it." He paused. "Do you know how many include Mom?" He gestured toward me. "All of them. Every single one. She's in every memory I have because she was there." Rita had no answer. There wasn't one. Dylan turned toward Vanessa. She stood only 3 feet away, mascara streaked, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. "I'm not trying to hurt you," he said. "I need you to hear that. I'm not angry. I'm not punishing you. But I need you to understand something." He stepped a little closer. "If you want to be part of my life, you can be. I'd like that. But you have to start from now. Not from a cake. Not from a speech. Not from an Instagram post that says, 'My son, my pride,' when you don't know my GPA, my best friend's name, or what I'm allergic to." Vanessa blinked. "What are you allergic to?" "Tree nuts," Dylan answered. "Since I was 4. Mom figured it out when I broke out in hives at a birthday party. She drove me to the ER doing 60 in a 35 zone. She sat in the waiting room for 4 hours holding a juice box and praying." Then he reached into the inside pocket of his vest. He pulled out something small, yellow, faded. The blanket. The baby blanket from 19 years earlier. The one that had wrapped me when I was a newborn. The one that had wrapped him the night I brought him home. The one that had rested inside the fireproof safe beneath my bed for the last 14 years. He unfolded it and held it up for a moment. Then he walked over to me. He took my hand. He placed the blanket gently into my palm. "This is yours, Mom. It was always yours." I held the blanket, thin as tissue, soft as memory, frayed along every edge. It smelled of cedar, baby shampoo, and 18 years of being someone's entire world. I couldn't speak. There was nothing left to say. My son had already said everything. Claire slipped an arm around my shoulders. The parents nearby stood in silence. Even the student with the tuba had stopped packing his instrument just to watch. The next several minutes passed in fragments. Vanessa standing alone on the grass with her arms still folded, staring down at the ground, her emerald dress lifting gently in the breeze. No one walked over to her. No one spoke to her. Rita taking Gerald by the arm and leading him toward the parking lot without saying a word. Gerald following the way he always had. Neither of them looked back. The cake resting on the grass beneath the oak tree.